All right. Let me know if you can see it better now. Okay, there you go.
Yeah,
Okay,
awesome.
thank you. So, thank you everyone for joining. I'm super, super, super excited to welcome Erika So, who's your happiness coach for Begin Branching Out. I will turn it over to her to talk about who she is. She's going to be talking to us today about finding a happiness, finding that balance, but also being accountable for all of our dreams. But before I turn it over to her, I just want to go through some housekeeping items. We would love for you to participate, and you can do so in a number of ways. So first, you can put something in chat, or you can just DM me privately. Keep in mind that if you want to come off mute or on camera, we are recording the session, so you will be on whatever recording we have. So if you want to remain anonymous, just DM me. But if you want to come off, DM me again and let me know, because I have to enable you so you can come off mute and talk to Erica. And then after about 2 or 3 days, you should receive a recording. It's also on YouTube. So make sure you go there and don't forget to subscribe, because once you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you should get access to all of our recordings. And we are also on PowerTofly on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. So please be sure and follow us. So then what I will do now is I will go ahead and turn it over to Erica to tell us a little bit about herself.
Awesome. Oh, it's really, I think it's like echoing right now.
Oh, is it?
It wasn't doing that before. Oh, okay. Uh, Hi everyone. My name is Erika So. I am originally from the San Francisco Bay Area and I'm currently living in Los Angeles. Um, as it says here, I used to be a middle school science teacher and had a really hard time with people pleasing and just trying to do everything for everyone else. And that burned me out really quick. And I realized I had to do something differently. Um, Curious if any of you resonate with that when you're just trying to do everything that everyone else needs or just trying to help. And it's, you're like, I'm just trying to help, but then sometimes it can even like backfire and it can, be either burnt out for you or burnt out for them, or they're just kind of hard feelings. So that's definitely an experience that I've had, and it's tricky. And I've learned a lot through experience and also doing some research and trying to figure things out on my own. And just really excited to be sharing that both with my clients and my students. Because I'm coming from a teaching background, I also have like a big space in my heart for youth, and so I still do programs for students in grade 6 through 12 with a program called Wave Learning Festival. So if you know anyone in that age group, like make sure you check out that org. Mostly taught by college students. What else? So yeah, most of my programs and things that I do with my clients are all one-on-one because I feel like it's really important to be able to get into the nitty-gritty and talk like really personally and deeply about what is going on with all of the things in our life. So if you're curious, you can check me out. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. My website is beginbranchingout.com. So today I'll be sharing just a few strategies with you specifically around like setting boundaries and making time for yourself when you feel like you're getting burnt out. Um, Lakshmi, can I share my
Yes.
screen?
There you
Uh,
go.
Sweet, thanks. Uh, New settings. Oh, that's fun. Um, you can't see the other stuff on this. I wonder if I can move this here. Okay, how does that look? Okay, great. I can see both now. Okay, so this is kind of a little overview of what I've just talked about. And really excited for you to interrupt me and share thoughts and ideas as you come in. So a quick overview of what we'll be going over today. We're going to be talking about how to minimize distractions, also how to know your boundaries and uphold them, and then the last one is to detach from outcomes. So we're going to go through these one at a time, but also kind of do an overview for each one, and then kind of try out the different tips and strategies as we go. So please jump in if you have anything that comes up or yeah. So this is just a quick overview of all the different kinds of distractions that kind of come up in our lives. So the biggest one I think is our virtual distractions. So that's either our phone or our email or our computer, our calls, right? So using the do not disturb feature. Social is like people like physically around us, whether that was our family when we're working at home, or if you're back in the office, that could be your coworkers. So being able to communicate what's going on so that they know when is a good time to talk with you versus to not distract you. Mental. So there's something I like to do. It's called a brain dump, which I'm sure you've all done before, but I think brain dump is just a cool name. And then physical is sometimes our body like physically is kind of antsy and anxious because we haven't moved around enough. And I think that was a very big thing during quarantine when we all kind of had to sit and we felt like we had to be at our computers for the whole 8 hours in the day. And then the last one is emotional. So having this grounding practice and giving ourselves that space and grace to breathe and really be present with what's going on in our bodies, which I realize that in our society, a lot of the times we're not taught to listen to ourselves, whether that's how we feel or how we feel emotionally or how we feel physically, but rather just kind of grind and hustle and continue doing whatever we need to get done. So kind of moving through these in a more supportive way. If you haven't like discovered or played with the do not disturb feature on your phone, it is magical. I literally have it set on my phone 23/7. Like the 1 hour that it's not on do not disturb is if I'm expecting a phone call, or at 3:30, which is when school used to end, and it's just a reminder like, hey, make sure you turn off the notifications. So you can enable it to turn off when you're sleeping. You can enable it when you're doing work. But I find like our phone often just wants to pull us away, either to look at Instagram or Facebook or to buy something because it's on sale. And in reality, it's an amazing tool. And also, we want to make sure that we're using it on purpose and with intention and awareness, rather than it kind of controlling our lives and we're just kind of at wit's end. And even if that's our best friend calling us or our family member that needs something, to again communicate that, which we'll talk about. And I think in terms of the physical environment, that we use headphones, and we also just literally tell people like, hey, I'm going to be working on this project until 11 a.m. or I need a focus right now. If you need anything, just please email me and I'll get back to you when I have a moment, right? And so it's kind of like setting this norm and the precedent that people know, okay, Erica's busy right now. And the understanding there is that when it is time to spend time with your friends or your family or your boss, that you're 100% focused. Because I know I've been guilty where I'm trying to do a presentation and I'm trying to listen to a workshop, and then I'm like texting or like my dog is bothering me, right? And you have like three different things happening. And when that's going on, it's hard to really give anything 100% focus if you have those three or four different things happening at the same time. So those are some big, I feel like low hanging fruit that can help you improve like being able to stay focused. So this next one that I mentioned was the brain dump, and it sounds really basic, and it can be really powerful, a really powerful way for you to figure out what's going on. I think for me, it's the first step I go to whenever I'm feeling really overwhelmed, and I kind of that overwhelm can sometimes look like either not wanting to get out of bed in the morning, or it might look like not being able to get off the couch when I'm taking a little break or when transitioning back from lunch. So taking a moment to really like sit down, okay, what do I have going on in my head? That could be things that we need to do. It could also be thoughts that are coming up. And so I really want this to be, it's a little bit different because I can't see your faces or interact as much. But I do want to give you space and time to really reflect on this on your own. So I would invite you to go ahead and actually take a piece of paper out. If you don't have one, just go grab one and take a minute to literally write down what are all the things going on in your head right now. If that's having to do laundry or do dishes, or maybe you're running out of milk, right? And you have to finish that project by 6 p.m. today, right? So just kind of like dump all those things out of your head. I'm going to just stop talking and put this timer on and literally give you a minute to brain dump. Okay. Oh, this is like so much more clunky. Oh, here. Option. So I just want to do a quick check-in. It's hard to like see faces and everything. How that felt for you all. Like yeah. How do y'all feel after taking a minute to just literally dump out whatever's in your head? You can go ahead and drop that in the chat. And Lakshmi, feel free to share also. Yeah. And so I get this a lot where people are like, oh my gosh, like there's still so much I haven't written down and I need more time. I invite you to please keep writing. Like just get it out. I don't want you to feel like it's a kind of a tease. You're like, oh, I got this like open and then kind of stopped. So I also want to invite that the more often that you do brain dumps on a regular basis, it's not going to feel like opening the floodgates, right? It's going to feel like pouring out a little cup. So Lakshmi, can you like, people can also share in the chat, but like, what was that like for you? Like what came up or like, how did it feel to do that brain dump right now?
For me, it was good to see it out there. But like someone said, I think it was Elizabeth, I felt like I have so much more to add. But it's good to see it visually away from my head because there it's a little jumble, but here I can at least see it in a concrete fashion. So I can start thinking about, okay, what should I really be focusing on?
Yeah, and that's such a big thing. It's when we're trying to keep track of everything in our head, we can only really track like 3 to 5 things at a time. And that's fun fact, that's why phone numbers are in those like 3-digit chunks. 3 digits, 3 digits, 4 digits, because it makes it a digestible piece, right? And so if we have more than 3 or 5 things, which I'm sure you do at any given time, like trying to go on in your head, your brain is kind of like in hyperdrive and it panics because it can't keep track of it all. So that's like the magic of when people go in like passion planners and bullet journaling and all these different kinds of like organizers, right? Is if you can get into a routine of just it is, even if it's just a blank notebook or a thing of post-its or those kitchen lists, whatever, just having a space that you always go to. And like morning, I love doing it in the morning or at night, like right before I'm done with work, so I don't have to think about it at night. That's a big one. Which like you're trying to sleep, and you're like, okay, what is all the things I need to do tomorrow? Then you kind of feel anxious. So we'll kind of like break a little bit of that down and how to move forward. So we'll be coming back to that list. I don't want you to feel like that's it. So hold on to that. Don't throw it away. And I want to share some more pieces on how to. Let me see. I have to like transition. Okay. And then I go like this. Okay, that works. So other piece is this kind of physical and kind of emotional check-in. So like giving yourself space to really explore and just breathe. Because I think depending on where you are, if this is like the first thing in your morning or if it's kind of the middle or end of the day, giving yourself space to just kind of wiggle around and move. I know sometimes hopefully you like get up from your seat and whether you're again in person at work or just at home, but just like do some wrist rolls. So that might kind of feel weird, but it's a nice way to just get some blood flowing because it's like we've spent so much time like this. So doing that in both directions to also kind of bend your fingers back. Do that gently. Don't try to hurt yourself. It's like sometimes people have bad experiences with stretching because they try to go too extreme. Yeah, I feel like our wrists and our hands don't get enough attention. So we can kind of twist also. And just doing that very gently. Kind of do some shoulder rolls, going in both directions, going back, also going forward. And I'm sharing a bunch of different stretches, but I also invite you if like there's a certain stretch that you feel more inclined, like if you want to do neck rolls, those are also really nice. And as always, just make sure you go in both directions so it's nice and even as much as you can. And so now what I'm going to do is kind of guide us through just a little bit of a grounding practice. And this is really, some people might call it a meditation. It's really just a space to breathe and focus again on just one thing at a time. So if you're on a seat or whatever chair, I know some people are working on their bed or couch or whatever, it's fine. To go ahead and scoot back so you're fully supported on whatever seat you're on. And then to put your feet flat on the floor, uncrossed. And then do one more nice shoulder roll back to open up your chest, sit up nice and strong. And then with your hands, I'll invite you, if you feel kind of hot right now, you need to release some energy, put your hand palms face up. Or if you're wanting some more grounding and feel a little bit cool, to put your palms face down on your lap. And then if you feel comfortable, I invite you to go ahead and close your eyes, or you can have a soft gaze at the wall or the floor in front of you. And wherever you are in your breathing, to just go ahead and let everything out through your mouth. We'll take a nice deep breath in through our nose. Hold it and let it all out through our mouth. Another nice deep breath in through our nose. Hold it and let it out through our mouth. Now we're going to just do a little check-in with our physical body. So starting at the very top of our head, noticing any sensation. You can feel your hair touching your face, or if you're wearing a ponytail, or your hair is touching your ears. Just noting any sensations that come up. Then we'll bring our attention to our forehead. Relax our eyebrows apart. Moving down. You can relax your smile so that your cheeks are gentle. Take your tongue off the roof of your mouth and unclench your jaw. As you continue down your neck, breathing nice and deep, noticing any sensations in your shoulders. As you continue moving down your back, you can imagine breathing nice and deeply, sending love in between each of your vertebrae. And as you get to the base of your seat, notice how your body connects to the chair beneath you. Notice how your hands feel resting on your lap. Bringing your attention down your thighs and to your knees, from your calves, and how your feet are connecting to the floor beneath you. And my favorite part is to give your toes a nice little wiggle. I think a lot of the times we forget how much they do in keeping us balanced and pushing us forward each day. Again, wherever you are in your breathing, to go ahead and let everything out through your mouth. Take a nice deep breath in through our nose. Hold it and let it out through our mouth. One last time, nice deep breath in through your nose. Hold it and let it out through your mouth. And whenever you're ready, I invite you to go ahead and blink open your eyes and join us back together. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. Love to hear how it is that you're feeling right now. It's helpful to share, not only so that I know, but also to do a personal check-in with you and practice listening to ourselves and focusing less on what's going on around us. So feeling relaxing, feels calm. Need to do that more often. Yeah. And so a big part of what I do is building routines, because decision fatigue is real. And then we're trying to decide what to do, when to do, why to do, what not to do. It becomes pretty taxing in itself. So when we can build these routines in, I call it kind of like a recipe. It's like, okay, it's 10 a.m., time to wake up and do a breathing practice, and then I'll journal, do my brain dump, and jump into work, right? And so when you kind of have this system of how you do things, which I know you already do, it's creating more space for you to do the things that you need, that you want, that recharge you, so that you can show up better for the people that you're serving. So really appreciate y'all trying that out and also reflecting on how it felt. So the next piece we'll talk about is to really figure out how can we build and revisit more of these boundaries. And I think a big piece of this is that a lot of the times we feel like boundaries are a bad thing, and that boundaries are limiting or constricting, and that like they prevent us from connecting with people. While that can be the case if done poorly, I think it's also a way to be more intentional and more focused with our time. I'll say that when I was teaching, I used to get really frustrated because I was like, okay, why do we have math, science, English, history? Like, why are they all separate, right? Because it's not like we just have history in the world and then we have English and now it's math time, right? Like, we're doing all three all at once all the time in our lives, until I I taught STEAM, right? So my class is literally integrating all of the things together. Um, but then really realizing that when we can focus on one at a time, when we pull them together, then they become so much stronger, right? Just like building a braid. It's like if you don't have like separate chunks, the braid is just a knot. It just doesn't really work. So really understanding that there truly is a time and place for everything, and hopefully we have the capacity and the control to decide when we are able to do those things. So I'm going to kind of go over what are some of the big pieces of how we can make those boundaries more intentional and make them supportive for us. So the very first thing is that before we can even make boundaries is to understand what are all the things that are in the game, right? What are all the things that we need to consider? What are all the things that we're committed to? And so that's the first part. The second one is to kind of organize and figure out, okay, what is the place for all of these things that I need to consider? And then figure out where each of those things goes. And then to enjoy just one of them at a time, which kind of goes back to our first point, right? Is if we're trying to do everything at once and we have too many distractions, we can't fully be present for each one of those things. So honor your commitments. We actually did this already. So that was our brain dump. And so you can do this on different scales. You can do it where you're focusing literally on what's the micro things that are happening right now in my life today. Or we can zoom out and say, okay, what are the macro things? What are all the different commitments I have right now that I'm focusing on in this period of my life? And so I want to leave that up to you and give you some space to do another brain dump, and you can choose. If you want to spend more time focusing on the micro, what are the things that you need to take care of right now, today, within the next maybe week? Or to zoom out and consider, what are the big buckets of opportunity that I'm focusing on right now, whether that's with your family, with volunteering, with work, with friends, with your dog, right? So I'm going to put a timer on for 1 minute, and I will stop talking. Okay. So coming back out of that, what we're going to do right now is we're really going to focus on micro. So if you have your macro list, that's great. And it's something that you can kind of repeat this process with later on. But right now I want you to focus on that micro list. What are the things that you're trying to get done today or tomorrow that are urgent? Okay. So what we're going to do now is the step 2, and organize tasks by priority. So there's this kind of matrix that helps us prioritize based on urgency and importance. I'm sure some of you have seen this before. I know it's always a welcome reminder that not everything has to be done today, right now, and the world is not going to end if it doesn't happen. And so I want to just walk you through this and kind of guide you through what these categories are. And I'm a big fan of annotation. So I'll walk you through that as well. So now that you have this kind of like piling list in front of you, I'm sure you have at least 10, 15, 20 items that you've dumped in the last 2 minutes. So the things that are important, right? These are the things that really, really matter, that maybe are the responsibilities for your job, might be taking care of your kids, paying the bills, right? The things that are not so important, and I'll explain more. This might be like sending a letter to your friend, or it might be taking out the garbage, or maybe it's making the bed, right? And so you might be like, hey, but it's really important that I connect with my friend. What I'll say here is that this is not binary, right? It's not that it's important or not important. It's really more of a gradient. Like, is this super duper important? Like, I need to pay the bill so I don't get kicked out of my house? Or is it not that important that if I take out the garbage tomorrow, the world is not going to end? Right. So kind of figuring out what that gradient looks like. And then the same on this side is urgent and not urgent. That bill is due today versus that presentation I have is on Friday. Right. So what do I do first? And so going back to this annotation, things that are urgent and important, that means they just need to happen. It doesn't matter how, but they just need to get done now. And so what I want you to do is I want you to look through your list of items, and you can, if you have a highlighter, or you can either just use like a star or underline or circle, whatever, like some kind of way. What are the things that to you feel very important and very urgent? And you can define that however you want. Usually I like to do that in like today, like it has to happen today. And just to identify what are the things that are standing out that I need to make sure they get addressed. I'm using Lakshmi as my kind of indicator. Like, I don't know how long people need, but Lakshmi's done. So the other piece is that, again, you have this urgent but not that important. So maybe it's the Netflix bill, or it's the garbage is kind of starting to pile up. It's like, I need to take that out or it's going to be on the floor and it's become more of a mess, right? It's making it painless. So this is kind of similar, where we just need to get it done, because I think sometimes it's like, oh, I don't really want to take out the garbage because then I have to put my shoes on, then I have to get the bag, and then I have to walk all the way to the garbage, and then, you know what I mean? It kind of like becomes this big task in our head. And so kind of figuring out, okay, like, let's just do it before I even think about it anymore and just get it over with. The other side here is it's important but not so urgent, right? Is like, let's go back to that presentation on Friday, right? So it's really important because this is kind of for the company, and we'll see like how, if we get this partnership or not. But I don't need to get it done today. Is scheduling it out, and a big piece with this one is that it really helps to break it down into chunks, which we'll talk about in a little bit, so that it doesn't feel like this big whomping mess and it gets into this zone and then you're freaking out and like you feel really overwhelmed. And then the last one is, it's not that urgent, not that important. I want you to look at your list, because this is kind of like the other side of the spectrum, and to go ahead and put parentheses. Sometimes people like have a tendency to cross it out. I don't want you to cross it out, because it's actually important enough that you put it on the list, right? And it's not like these things don't need to happen, but I want you to identify for yourself, like, it's okay if I don't get to that this week or in the next couple of days, but it's not falling off the radar, to go ahead and draw parentheses around those items. And so we'll talk a little bit more about how to do this scheduling in this next piece. So in terms of the scheduling and making things less painful, it really helps to make them in chunks. So when are these things going to happen, and also understanding how long do they actually take, right? And I think, like I was mentioning before, is sometimes when you're, again, I feel like this is a general example, is you have a presentation on Friday, right? Complete presentation. Like, that can be like a very daunting task. It could be like, okay, write out the outline for the presentation, build the intro slide, put the text into the slides, right? How can you chunk it out so that it feels more manageable? And when you're sitting down and you're like, okay, I have to finish the presentation, it doesn't feel so much of a beast, and so much of a daunting task. And so sometimes people like to do like a mind map where they do the bubbles and everything. Sometimes people just like to write it out, or some people just put it directly into their calendar. I invite you to do whatever feels best for you, but to take a little time to write down, okay, like, this presentation's at 10 a.m. on Friday. How can we chunk this down so that it feels more manageable? It's like, so drawing out those mini milestones, and the next steps could be putting it into your calendar, passion planner, post-its, phone alarm clock, things like that. And a big piece of this, we're kind of condensing a lot of steps here, is when we schedule things, we make sure it happens, right? Unless it gets to this point and then we're just kind of running in chaos mode, right? Or like, hey, get it done, get it done, get it done. And I think that's a big tendency where we're living in this, everything feels urgent, everything feels important. And so I'm trying to do everything all at once. And it's hard to do anything when it feels like I don't even know what to do. So again, I want to just give you a little bit of time to chunk through that, and either that's writing down the timelines or like the smaller chunks that are there, or if that's migrating things into your calendar. I'll give you a minute to kind of figure out, when do you want to schedule these things so that you can feel more ready. And I think one thing I'll mention is also, it can help to literally prioritize in terms of numbering. So like, what is the first thing that you want to get done today? You put a 1, 2, 3, 4, and then going through that and then chunking it out. Okay, so I'll give you a minute to kind of play with that. If you have questions or thoughts, like, go ahead and drop those in the chat. Okay. So I know it's like, I could use another 5 minutes. You're like trying to like get everything in and migrate it in. So the idea is today, with our limited time, I just want to give you kind of ideas to start with and to kind of play with. And maybe you'll like all of them, but maybe you won't. And so just kind of giving you a broad exposure to all these different kinds of ideas so that you can see what you like and then take what you like and don't worry about the rest. So please don't feel obligated that like this has to be done in sequence. Okay. So now that we kind of have our chunks out and we've decided, okay, I need to build the outline first, and then I need to send a draft to my coworker, and then I need to put the images in, right? When things can be kind of daunting, it helps to have a flow method. And so flow is this idea when we know what to do and we know how to do it and we just need to get it done, right? It's like they call it flow state or they call it in being in the groove, right? And you're like you're going and you don't really, sometimes you lose track of time because you're so like in the zone. And I'll say it's hard to do that if you are distracted, right? If there's someone calling your attention or if your phone is ringing, or if you're checking emails, it's hard to get into flow state. So one really cool tool that will help you get into flow state is by making literal chunks of your time like you just did, and doing something called the Pomodoro method. I'm curious, drop it in the chat if you've heard of the Pomodoro method before or not, like just curious to hear. And so the main idea of Pomodoro is that you take 25 minutes to focus on a very explicit task, and then you take a 5-minute break. So they found that this is the best amount of time chunks to get into flow state and get a lot of progress done in that 25 minutes. And then to give yourself a 5-minute break so that you can walk around, get that blood moving, and just kind of check in. Go to the bathroom, drink water, maybe get a snack, and then hop back into your next 25-minute block so that you can still maintain that flow state even though you took a break. And so I'm just sharing one of my favorite apps that helps with this is called Flora, and this is what the interface looks like. So if you pay, you can actually bet on yourself. So the idea is that you like pay, and if you break the focus, then you end up donating money and they plant a tree. Otherwise, the money comes back to you. You don't need to do that. You can also just do it for free, which is what I do. And so you can change the amount of time, and then it helps me to say, okay, what am I focusing on in this 25 minutes? And I read it here. Okay, build presentation slides, right? And then I push start. And what it actually does is it locks you out on your phone. So what I do is I turn on my music, turn on Flora, and then I go. I'm working on my computer, right? And I know exactly, okay, my goal, I have 10 minutes left. I need to finish the other 3 slides and get this done. And I love competition. So this is my way to kind of like compete with myself and keep myself on track with what I want to do. There's a lot of other Pomodoro timer apps, or you can literally just use a timer by yourself, like just turn on the timer on your phone. But this is nice because it does it automatically for you. Yeah, so that's one of my favorite tools that I think is really cool. And I can drop the link. Y'all saw that before, so you can get to it more easily. Okay. So one of the big things, the last part of that is you want to do one thing at a time and just focus on the present. I think there's this like general tendency in our culture to be anxious, to be worried about what happens if this happens, and then we're very creative. We come up with all these like crazy scenarios, like if I don't finish this presentation, they're gonna fire me, and blah blah blah, right? And it's like it's not gonna be that crazy. Like it's not actually gonna happen. Like maybe your presentation isn't done completely, or maybe it's not the way you wanted it to be. But at the end of the day, you might end up just having to ask for help, and it's gonna be okay. So what I want to do is I want you to kind of look at the items on your list and think about really like the worst case scenario. Like if like the top priority on your list, I think this is the best exercise. The top priority, the number one thing that you have on your list, if that didn't happen, what would go on? If you were not able to complete that task, what would happen? Because oftentimes, again, because our mind is so creative, we come up with these worst case scenarios that are catastrophic. And in reality, it's not going to be that bad. And so when you can kind of accept that and kind of situate yourself, okay, if I didn't finish the presentation, I would just have to tell my boss, and then I could use an old presentation from last year or whatever, right? And to really break that down so that now it doesn't feel so scary. And this, again, is accompanied with like perfectionism a lot of the time. Because if we don't have it done completely the way we want it to, the world is going to end. So I want to give you a minute to kind of reflect on that with, again, the top priority item that came up in your brain dump as you kind of worked through it. So here's a minute.
Funny you mentioned that because I just started a new job and my presentation is due Thursday. I'm going through this horrible scenario of I'm new if it's not perfect because I'm still learning. What if she thinks I don't know what I'm doing? And, it's just because I'm new and I think I've built this scenario in my head.
Take about 10 more seconds to think about the scenario and what you would do. So I love it's funny coincidence actually because I just like kind of randomly pulled that honestly like in preparing for this presentation. I was like, oh, I was kind of freaking out. So it's interesting that you have a similar experience, but I think a lot of the times we go into this rabbit hole of like the world is going to end in some capacity, and in reality it's not that serious, and it's also not like you're just not going to do the work. It just, this is the extreme, right? Because I think we're so fixated on it being perfect and being all these different ways, and in reality it's like perfect just doesn't really exist, right? The way we think of it is like, I think another kind of helpful alternative is understanding that perfect can just mean it did its job. And I heard this example of like, okay, a perfect chair, that just means it keeps me off the floor. There's not that much there, right? It doesn't have to be like completely contouring to my bottom and like massage my back. It just needs to keep me off the floor. That's a perfect chair, right? And so understanding like perfect can be different than we've been taught that it means. So, yeah.
Absolutely right. And I think adding to that stress because I want this to be this perfect presentation. But in my heart, I know I'm still new, I'm learning things, and there are still going to be missing pieces. So I'm glad you said that because now I'm going to go in, okay, I'll give as best a presentation I can. And the worst case is I have to fill in the gaps and learn more to build it again.
Yeah. And I think there's also a big piece of that with trust, like allowing ourselves the grace, like, okay, like you can't make everyone happy. Like there's a song I really like. It's a, you can't, I think it's called Cup of Tea by Casey Musgraves. And it talks about how you can't, like, some people don't like green tea, some people like black tea, some people want honey, some people want sugar. So if you make a cup of tea, like it's not going to be for everyone. And that's just honestly how you're showing up in the day, right? You can only do so much. So good song. So this last piece is kind of like what happens if, right? And looking at those outcomes. So number one is recognizing what is within and beyond your control. Focusing on your actions, not specifically the outcomes, because I think we are often so fixated on that, and at the end of the day, we can't control it. And then to reflect on the experience, to say, okay, this is what happened. Maybe I missed that piece, and I want to add more animations or add more whatever, but giving yourself again that space and grace to see, okay, what did I learn from this experience, rather than kind of beating yourself, oh, I messed this up and then I didn't do that and then they didn't like that, right? So changing our focus, because normally we focus on our outcomes. For example, if we're looking to get a raise at work or get a promotion, you can't ultimately decide what your boss does or how HR works or who applies for it, right? Like that's not up to you. The other side of it is that you can control your actions. So in this example of trying to get a raise or trying to get a promotion is looking at the research, seeing who else has applied, what else in the industry in your area would qualify you for that promotion or that raise, right? Because that's something that you can share as evidence that could make it more compelling of why you should get the raise or the promotion. And because again, what you do is completely within your control, not what others do. Other thing is this tendency towards perfectionism and trying to do this people pleasing can turn into a workaholic. I remember I watched this video that one of my coaches sent to me on what a workaholic is, and I was like, I don't think I'm a workaholic. And then I read and I was like, oh my gosh, that's totally me. So working more than you're required, 40 hours a week, on the weekends and holidays, not taking time off because it's more inconvenient to take time off. I keep hearing people talk about this. And then the biggest one is tying our identity to work. A lot of the times when we talk to people like, hey, what do you do? Who are you? I'd be like, I'm a teacher, right? And I felt like that meant something about me and that was this noble profession and I was doing all this stuff. And while I was helping people, it wasn't because I was a teacher, right? It's because of who I was as a person. And so the identity of teacher is just one element, and also being able to understand there's other parts of me and that doesn't define who I am. So you are not your job, no matter what people tell you. You are inherently worthy, no matter how many mistakes you make. And I'd like to say mistakes are opportunities in learning. So giving yourself those chances to grow and learn. You don't have to prove anything to anyone else. I know in our work we're the example I just gave is why you deserve the promotion, right? At the end of the day, it's if that's something that's important to you, that's a decision that you get to make. And this last one I think is the most controversial is that you don't have to do anything, right? If we go back to that list, if you didn't do the presentation, it's possible you might lose your job, right? But again, it's you're not going to Milo. Everybody. It's not going to be the end of the world, right? And understanding that you do have the option to do things or to not do things, and really leaning into that. I challenge you the next time that you're like, oh, I have to do this, and you're really miserable about it, to challenge yourself and say, okay, if I didn't do this, what would happen? And to kind of go down that route and understand you don't really have to do it. Okay, so I'm not going to give us 3 minutes. I'm going to get my okay, everybody. I want to just give you some space, and I'm going to literally give you a minute to write down some of the things that make you happy. And what I'll encourage you to do is to not think too much about it. Just let it go. Just write them down. Could be socks. It could be cup of tea. Could be your mom. Phone calls, whatever. I'm going to give you 1 minute, and I want you to just dump it all out.
Adorable. Adorable dog. Oh. Oh my God. Cute is that? How cute are you?
I think I'm showing off.
Oh, I don't blame you. It's adorable. But they do bring a smile to our faces.
Yeah.
They do, and I think that was part of it when I worked remotely for a long time, and I do now again. But in the middle, I had to go back, and just having sometimes these cats jump across. So no matter how stressed I was, they make me smile. So and dogs are the same way. It's like animals.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the powerful things with pets. is just being able to really be there and serve. Like they just want to be like have attention and have a good time, and they help us remind us like it's not that big of a deal. Like it's actually nap time. I'm not gonna do what you're telling me to do.
And they don't ask for a whole lot, just some love, some happiness, and
Maybe some food.
maybe some food, exactly.
So, wanted to share that opportunity because I think a lot of the times we focus on what's wrong in our lives or what's wrong in the world, and when we think about all these things that bring us happiness, I want you to the next we're a little short on time is be to look at like how are those things existing in our lives right now, right? And reflecting on that gratitude is like there's a lot of things that are going well and there's a lot of things that are right in the world, and instead of like being fixated on minor inconveniences or even problems, even if we're having trouble meeting rent or if we're having a trouble with our boss at work, understanding that there's also more to life rather than just those big pieces. Yeah, so for the sake of time, invite you to do a gratitude reflection afterwards. Just want to do this quick overview. So number one was to really just do one thing at a time and minimize the distractions that we kind of walk through together. To revisit your boundaries, kind of figure out what are all the things going on in your life? What are the things that you need or want to do? And how can we make times to chunk and do it one at a time? And then the last one was to recognize what's within and beyond our control, and to really focus on our relationships rather than just getting things done, right? Like, what does this really mean, and how does this affect my life overall? So, something that I do with essentially all my clients is we do something called the grace reflection, and this is a really great opportunity to have some gratitude and to release anything that went on in the day. So I want to share that. That link is there in the chat along with my LinkedIn. Thank you for dropping that, Lakshmi. And if you have any questions, I know we're about at time right now. I'm happy to stay on. I don't know if Lakshmi, we have like flexibility to stay on a little longer.
For at least another 5 minutes, so I can stay on.
Okay, great. And then I also want to drop in, if you want to do a one-on-one call with me, I have space to hear you and share any things that are specifically going on. So you can email me at erica.beginventuringout.com. Follow me on all of the socials. I don't have Twitter though. Try the Grace Reflection, and then my Jumpstart is a one-on-one opportunity to really like, how do we make time for these things in our day and build routines based on that. So those are some awesome opportunities. Just want to thank everyone for making time to have some space for yourself today. So if you have any questions, we're here.
Thank you. I'm going to, is there anyone in the audience that has a question? Lots of good information. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Anyone? And feel free to let me know. This platform is interesting because I have to I have to enable you to come off mute. So just send me a DM or drop it in chat if you have any questions. It looks like probably not. Okay. Right. Then thank you very much. And as a reminder, you will get a copy of the recording. It will also be available on YouTube. It does take a few days. So look out for that if you want to replay it or if you just want somebody else to listen to this. So thank you very, very much for all the tips. And please make sure to copy all the links, follow her on her social media, as well as check out her website and schedule that 15-minute interest call to learn more about scheduling happiness. So thank you, Erika. It was such a pleasure to meet you again today. It was awesome.
Awesome. It was great. This was a great time. Thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for coming, the audience. And then check out PowerTofly because there are other events of a similar nature. So you'll get access or you'll at least get information on all of the events. And when you sign up for an account, you will hear about jobs and various other things that PowerTofly hosts. So keep a lookout. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Have a great happiness day and a happiness week. So thank you, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it, Erica. I learned a lot, so thank you, and I'll be in touch. So
Sounds
thank you
good.
very much. Bye.